Can't she just stick with that? I mean, she thinks she know everything.
Let's talk everything.
It's everything. I'm everything.
Welcome back to another episode of the Emajae Talks Everything podcast, where I talk politics, pop culture, and everything there is in between. I am Emajae, and you know, as always, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to be talking to y'all. If you haven't subscribed, then you need to do that now. I hate to be the person, actually, I don't hate to be that person. What are you doing? If you haven't already liked or subscribed, whether you are watching on YouTube or streaming via Spotify, Apple, whatever, make sure that you do what you need to do to stay locked in so that when I post, you are aware. Okay, let's go ahead and get started because every video I promise that I'm going to do this in under an hour, and I don't. So this time I'm going to try to keep my promise and just go ahead and get into all of today's topics. First things first, though, I do want to acknowledge that the Las Vegas Aces just won the 2025 WNBA championship, and I am so lit. I love watching that team play because it's literally watching greatness happen in real time. That team is led by A'ja Wilson, who is one of my sorors. And so I'm just incredibly proud of how far the WNBA has come, how far A'ja Wilson has come, just watching her, the entire trajectory of her career. And I just had to shout them out. That was a very, very good series that they had. And so shout out to all of the ladies in the WNBA. I hope that you get what you deserve in your negotiations right now. For those of you who don't keep up with the WNBA, they are actually in negotiations with the league for, just honestly to be compensated and to be paid what they are worth. And honestly, that's a conversation that is long overdue, but with what we've seen over the past few years with the WNBA having a lot more eyes on it and the value of these teams skyrocketing, it just makes sense to finally pay these women what they're worth. And so I wish them the best of luck on their off season. I am a fan of Unrivaled. I won't go too much into what that is, but it's essentially another league that was started by a current player, Nafisa, and then who else? Was it Stewart? Brianna Stewart? Basically, it's a separate league that is outside of the WNBA. It happens during the off season, and it's amazing. It treats the women right. It pays them what they're worth. And so now that the WNBA season is over, we'll start seeing some of the ladies playing in the Unrivaled League. And so I look forward to that. Shout out to the Aces. And with that, let's move on. So let's actually move into the new segment that I introduced my last episode, which is everything that's keeping me entertained. And it's in this segment where I talk about the things that I'm watching, reading, and listening to. And I was going to talk about Love is Blind, the new season 9, but not yet. Not quite yet, because there's a few more episodes to go, and so I need to see it through. I need to see if things pan out the way I think. But let me know down in the comments if y'all are watching Love is Blind, because when I tell y'all, I'm not sure that these people are being given psych evaluations when when they go on these shows. I am not understanding how some of these people are making it on these platforms, and I'm gonna just leave it there. I'll circle back and we can go into that at a later date, but that is something that I'm watching. But we gotta get into my girl Olivia Dean. I have been streaming so much of her music. Olivia, let me pull her up because let me go ahead and get her together. So just for context, I had no idea who Olivia Dean was like a week ago, okay? I'm gonna be honest. Someone that I follow and whose opinion that I trust deeply was on TikTok talking about how she has been replaying Olivia Dean non-stop. And I'm like, who is this girl? Like, for you to be listening to someone nonstop, I'm intrigued. So I checked her out. She has a new album out called The Art of Loving. And when I tell you, I played that album from top to bottom, and I was just like, thank goodness that there are people out here still making good music. Like, honestly, making actual music that you can relate to, that, you know, melodically makes sense. It's not, you know, you can tell that it's not music that's manufactured. It's not music that is doing anything other than representing the expression of the artist, but it's done so well, done so beautifully. You can tell there's so much thought into the album. And so I absolutely recommend Olivia Dean's new album, The Art of Loving. I've been listening to some more of her music, but that album has been on repeat. And I think, let's see, let's play a few of the songs that I like the best. Okay, that's one of the songs that I like, but not the one I want to play. There's a few. So there's like, there's a few songs that I really, really like. I'm just gonna play snippets of the ones that I like. So going in order of the album, not necessarily my favorite, but of the album. One of my favorite songs is Close Up. And let's hear a little bit. Well, actually, I don't want to play it yet, but so Close Up is one of my favorite songs on here. Close Up is really more so about, you know, getting to know somebody, but you're not really like sure if that's the person for you. Y'all are both kind of feeling each other out, right? And so it's called Close Up. It's like we get close to each other, but it's like we're also keeping our distance, and it's kind of like that back and forth situation. Love, love, love the song. So Easy is also one of my favorite songs. It's really just a fun, more upbeat song where she's really just talking her ish and talking about why it's so easy to fall in love with her. I mean, honestly, that is the beauty of that song. It's within the context of the album, I think it probably means a little bit more because the trajectory of the entire album, it goes from kind of like meeting someone and kind of this back and forth, and you kind of have to see how it progresses. But where this song is placed within the context of the album can be interpreted as Olivia being like, almost not so much, oh, it's so easy to fall in love with me. Yes, she's talking her stuff, but also like, it's so easy to fall in love with me. You know, like what is not clicking here? You know, it's what is the back and forth for? It's so easy to fall in love with me, right? Beautiful song, love. Next song, Let Alone the One You Love. This is a song, if there's any song on the album that I recommend, this would be one of those like top 3 for me. I just think it's, again, a beautiful song. Let me go through some of the lyrics because I feel like I'm speaking in like very high level. And y'all are like, girl, what is the song about? So let's go to it real quick. Let me see. Okay, so Let Alone the One You Love. Let me see some bars from here that I just think, let's see. And apparently the tea is, now I'm gonna be honest, this is all alleged, because I did not look into this. But apparently this song or this album is really based off of her relationship with Harry Styles. Apparently they had a thing, and yeah. So it's such a beautiful song where she's like, it's too much to mend. You're the hug that had to end, though I've tried to hold on. And if you knew me at all, you wouldn't try to keep me small. Who would do that to a friend, let alone the one you love? Goodness. Anyway, let's move on. Man I Need is, you know, it's that girl. I love that song. I probably played that song, Man I Need, the most. She has other songs that are absolutely beautiful, Loud, which she recorded with a live orchestra, and the song that we hear on the track was beginning to end, no interruptions, no pauses, no nothing. Just a beautiful voice, a beautiful album, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it to anyone who's looking for some good music, especially it's fall weather, it's cozy weather, it's cutesy, it's all the things. So make sure you check out Olivia Dean if you have not. That's it for everything that I'm everything that's keeping me entertained. Obviously, I'm watching and listening and reading more, but that's it for that segment. Let's move on. So, I'm so excited to talk about this next topic. Let's go ahead and introduce my next segment, everything that is in the news. So, Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift. And notice, Taylor Swift is in the everything in the news segment. She is not in the everything I'm listening to. Just for the record, okay? But a few episodes ago, so what, episode 12 or so, a few episodes ago, I talked about Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce and the entire engagement. And I gave, a little bit of my thoughts and feelings about just Taylor Swift in general, just Taylor Swift as a person, and not only my issue with the engagement, but I think really underlying that was my issue with Taylor Swift. And at a high level, I articulated that a lot of my frustrations with Taylor Swift was that she positioned herself constantly as this underdog, as this woman who, has just had such a tough life. And because she perceives herself as awkward or maybe not the quote unquote cool girl, then it's just like this constant regurgitated story of her being the victim, her being the underdog. Oh my gosh, like I'm not gonna be the one that gets the man. And I just never bought into it because, as I also explained in my previous video, I am a Black woman. So for a white woman who, right? I just don't relate to a lot of her storytelling, her experiences, or even just generally her perspective. I find it quite annoying to constantly position yourself as a victim, an underdog, when you are quite literally on the opposite spectrum of things. To me, it feels very dismissive of people who really are, quote unquote, the underdog, right? And so got into all of that in episode 12. If you haven't checked it out, then you should absolutely do so. That was a fun episode. But I'm bringing Taylor Swift back up, not because I, want to make this always about Taylor Swift. However, here recently, she released her new album called The Life of a Showgirl. And of course, I didn't listen to it, but it was all over my timeline a lot more than normal. My feed is tailored to myself, to my likes and interests. So normally I'm not getting that much TSwift content, but when her album dropped, it was everywhere, and not really for a good reason. It sounds like not only are passive listeners even more tired of her, but what are they called? The Swifties? Like, the Swifties, right? Her own fans hated this album, okay? Absolutely hated this album. And even people who are not, full-blown Taylor Swift fans got a hold to some of the lyrics, some of the music, and a lot of the feedback really tied back to a lot of what I had said weeks ago about Taylor Swift essentially being mediocre and, just my issues with her, right? And so I wanted to talk a little bit more about the issues that people were having when it came to Taylor Swift's new album and how that kind of ties back to my overall issue with her. So starting off, I'll say that there are two major themes and takeaways in terms of the criticism that Taylor Swift was facing in terms of her new album. I think the first category of issues, and I won't say in my opinion the most important because it all ties together, but the main category is Taylor Swift's album is riddled with microaggressions aimed at Black women. Let's talk about it. Am I surprised by this? No, I'm not surprised by this. But I want to be specific. So let's pull up the lyrics. So apparently there is one song on the album called Eldest Daughter. Now, if I'm just hearing the title, I'm here for it, because if you know, I'm the oldest daughter. I talk about being the oldest daughter all of the time and everything that comes with that. And so in theory, that sounds like the type of jam that I would be into. False. So let's go to the second verse of this song by Taylor Swift. It says, "But I'm not a bad bitch, and this isn't savage." What? But I'm never gonna let you down. I'm never gonna leave you out. So many traitors, smooth operators. Y'all made this girl a billionaire. Smooth operators, but I'm never gonna break that now. I'm never gonna leave you now. Okay, let me say that real quick again. But I'm not a bad bitch, and this isn't savage, but I'm never gonna let you down. I'm never gonna leave you out. So many traitors, smooth operators, but I'm never gonna break that vow, blah, blah, blah. So this is an example of what is essentially a microaggression against Black women. Because when you hear the words bad bitch and when you hear the word savage, who do you think of, right? You think of the women who termed these phrases, who made these phrases popular. When you think of a bad bitch, you think of, artists like Nicki Minaj, or not even just bad bitch. Let me be clear. When you hear the terms bad bitch and savage, you're thinking of who? You're thinking about Megan Thee Stallion. You're thinking about Nicki Minaj. You're thinking about the City Girls, right? Because in that circle, in that genre where Black women are, at the center, that's the language that we use. Like, I'm a bad bitch, I'm that bitch, right? Or, like we all know I'm a savage, classic, we all know this.
I also want to add a little bit more context, which is apparently before or after Kayla Nicole, I'm not sure, but Travis Kelce was trying to holler at Megan Thee Stallion at one point too, and there are receipts. So the thing about it is the fact that she made this language aimed at Megan Thee Stallion with the whole "I'm not a savage" even makes more sense to me.
And so for Taylor Swift to take time out of her life and space on her album to make it clear, to draw a clear line in the sand, I'm not that, right? It's, in my eyes, a way to other herself from women who have been associated with that language. And women who have been associated with that language are Black women, okay? Now, you might be saying, you're reading into this too much, Emajae. And let me tell you, I'm not. Or maybe I am, but who cares? But I'm not, okay? Because the reality is, Taylor's insecurities when it comes to being compared to Black women, or, I think there's a lot there, especially when you add the context of her new fiance's ex-girlfriend is a Black woman. And not just his ex-girlfriend, but all of his ex-girlfriends are Black women. And so, I'm so sorry. Pause. And so for Taylor Swift to be this billionaire who is, like I said, obviously still feeling some levels of insecurity because, again, she's constantly positioning herself as this underdog and this like quirky, whatever. It's, to me, yeah, I feel like it is a microaggression against Black women. It is a way to draw the line in the sand and say that you are not that. You are not a Black woman. You are this. I'm not gonna be a traitor, right? And that's the added part to this is she doesn't stop there. She goes on to say, not only am I not them, but she continues, I'm never gonna let you down. I'm never gonna leave you. So many traitors, as if his exes are traitors, as if these Black women are traitors, right? And there's other examples of this throughout her entire album. She makes a statement on one of the songs about how Kayla, referencing Kayla Nicole Smith being in her phone and like, all of this other stuff. But throughout the entire album, it's just these microaggressions towards these Black women. And I think that Taylor Swift really needs to get the hell over it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are a billionaire. And let this be a lesson to everyone. It doesn't matter how much money is in your account. It doesn't matter what you walk around with in terms of whether you wear designer. It doesn't matter who your man is. It doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter what you have access to. People are walking around this life with all of that and are still insecure fundamentally about who they are. And I think a lot of that has a lot to do with how we end up with Taylor Swift doing what she does, which is, you know, mediocre music. But in this sense, aiming a lot of that mediocre music towards Black women, which I don't appreciate. And also, I think it's particularly, do I want to say violent? I think it's particularly reckless, I'll say, for Taylor Swift to see how her fans already have attacked Kayla Nicole, and to see how much backlash she's already gotten for simply just existing, simply for being someone's, you know, ex. Instead of Taylor Swift focusing the conversation on her and her relationship with her man, taking so much time to add fuel to the fire when you have this huge fan base, I think it's extremely reckless. You know what I'm saying? Like, you are obviously a bigger name. You are obviously, you know what I'm saying, someone who has so many more fans. And for you to take that power essentially and direct that energy and direct your fan base towards this group who's already marginalized, who is already actually considered within the context of our society, you know, on the lower side of the totem pole. Mind you, let's be clear, according to society, right? We're talking about sexism, racism, that, right? Now, obviously not my personal opinion. But when you use your power to target and add fuel to the fire against already marginalized communities, that is not cool. And then to turn around and act like you are the marginalized community because you're not cool, because you don't have the vibe and the swag and just the what's gotta be in you, like the way a Kayla Nicole does. I mean, it's a $1 billion problem that the billionaire can't solve, and she's sick about it. And the fans are seeing it. Another major theme that came out of the whole Taylor Swift Life of Showgirl album was, and I think the Swifties were more upset with this than the microaggressions probably, but the music was just really bad apparently. Now, it's kind of hard for me to listen to people say, oh, but the music is so bland and mediocre, as if most of Taylor Swift's music doesn't sound just like this. Like, literally, majority of Taylor Swift's music, to me, has sounded bland and has sounded mediocre. And, you know, Taylor Swift sings a lot about love and her relationships, and I don't think that that's inherently a bland and mediocre topic. So many people are exploring love and the nuances and all of that, right? I literally just recommended Olivia Dean, and her album is called The Art of Loving. But as an adult, right, there is depth to our understanding of love. And as you grow and evolve and get older, it should feel different. It should sound different. It should look different. And I think Taylor Swift fans are starting to realize, finally, that this girl is 34, 35 years old, and she is still singing about love in the same way that she was singing about love 10, 15 plus years ago. And it's okay when you're doing that at 18, 21, right? At 25, we give you a pass. But at 35 years old, if your experience of love and your perception of love and life is the same as it was when you were 18, 19, 20, that's a problem. That's a problem, especially if especially if your fan base, right, is growing. You're gonna get left behind. Now there's this gap between the people who fell in love with your music and you, because here you are still stuck in, you know what I'm saying? Meanwhile, your fans are getting older and they're like, this is not reflective of, you know, it doesn't feel fully developed. And I've seen a lot of conversations online about why that might be. And the theories that I tend to gravitate towards are this idea that Taylor Swift's career has been grounded in the fact that she is a white woman and she is palatable to a general audience, and she's a pop girly, but she's a pop girly that came up in a time where you couldn't be too sexy and you couldn't get into things too much, right? Like a Sabrina Carpenter, for example. We've talked about Sabrina Carpenter on this channel before, but Sabrina Carpenter, who, you know, was in all of this controversy for her album cover where she was like kneeling on the ground, tugging at her man's leg. Tugging at her man's leg, and that was controversial, but for the most part, Sabrina Carpenter and her brand is being a spicy pop girly, right? She is like the Madonna of her time, and I mean that very loosely. I mean that in terms of being more of a rebel pop star, right? But that wasn't how Taylor Swift came up. She literally came up as this, you know, country-esque, palatable, blonde hair, white girl who is just gonna sing you the cutest little love song and I think people are tired of that because now she's very much not that person. She's 35. And I don't know if Taylor Swift knows that. Like, how many times is she gonna continue, you know, referencing her as some high school girl? Like, she's still making references of her being in high school and high school stories in this album at 35 years old. Like, no. And I'm not going to, I think it would be unfair for me to get too deeply into the melodies and all of that, because like I said before, I did not listen to the album, so I can really only give you my thoughts about substantively the context of her album. But from the snippets that I've heard, like, there's not anything interesting even going on with the production. So it's like your lyrics are outdated and you're gonna keep them outdated because that's the brand that you're attached to. That's the brand that made you famous. So you can't even really explore into this more, you know, sensual or this more in-depth version, evolved version of who you are. And maybe she hasn't evolved. That's also an option, you know? Like, that's also a possibility. We don't know what life she's living. We know that she's a billionaire. We know that Taylor Swift has been rich for most of her life at this point, that she's been famous for most of her life at this point. Like, she could very well be in such a bubble that maybe she hasn't evolved. And I think that now when you mix in Taylor Swift fans who are exhausted by her outdated, archaic, lazy, mediocre music, and you couple that with, you know, Taylor Swift fans and passive listeners who are hearing these microaggressions, it's like, what was the purpose of this album? Like, seriously, girl, you just got engaged. Why are you even doing this? Like, don't you have a wedding to go plan? Like, do something else. You know, I think it would be in her best interest to really take some time, go enjoy her life, enjoy being a married woman, work, obviously. I'm not saying not to work if that's what she wants to do, but I think she just needs to really evolve, touch some grass, and like get some real perspective on life. And maybe she'll be cooler. You know, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to fix Taylor Swift's issue. She's a billionaire. She can fix almost any issue, but you know, it's either in you or it's not. And it just seems like she's insecure because black women are, you know, we it, you know, and she knows that her man is into that. You know what I'm saying? Every single one of Travis Kelce's exes is a Black woman. Every single one of them that we know about, at least, every single one that we know about. And so do with that what you will. Again, this is not a Taylor Swift, I don't seek going out of my way to talk about this woman or anything like that. But, she's in the news, and I think we have to start calling out mediocrity when we see it. So let's move on. Next, I want to talk about Wendy and Eddie Osefo. So I understand that those names probably do not ring a bell at all for a lot of my audience, but I am a Housewives fan, okay? I have watched The Real Housewives since I could remember, honestly. Like literally since I could remember. I watch now, currently, I don't watch every city, but as pretty much across the years, I've kept up with whether it be Jersey, New York, of course, Atlanta, Salt Lake City, which they're the best in my opinion at the moment. Orange County is the classic. So, I mean, there's many Housewives cities, but The Real Housewives of Potomac is the show that Wendy Osefo and Eddie Osefo are a part of. And I have a love-hate relationship with The Real Housewives of Potomac, particularly because the show felt like it felt like my show, right? I'm a Housewives fan, and the only other Housewives city cast that's made up predominantly of Black women is The Real Housewives of Atlanta, which during the time that Potomac came out, I was still actively watching Atlanta. I don't anymore because I can't. But Potomac is, near the DMV area, which is a second home to me. Love that area. And this cast was the second Real Housewives cast that was going to be made up predominantly of Black women. And I enjoyed the show until I didn't. I won't go too much into that, but it really stems from a lot of colorism that was coming out between the light-skinned Black girls and the darker-skinned Black women. And one of the things that I really, really loved about, love is a strong word, let me take that back. One thing that I really, really liked and appreciated about Dr. Wendy, because she's a doctor, okay? She's a doctor and professor, and she has 4 degrees, but I really appreciated seeing that representation on the screen, because when Dr. Wendy came on the show, it was at the height of the colorism conversation on the show. And she is a chocolate woman. She's with a chocolate man. She has like 3 chocolate babies. And I just loved seeing that representation. I love that, when she came onto the show, that she was very articulate and very intelligent as a professor and 4 degrees. And they gave her a lot of ish for that, right? They gave her a lot of crap about her education, and she stood 10 toes in being proud in that. She comes from, I believe, a Nigerian background, so she carries a lot of tradition and culture, and I just really enjoyed seeing that on my screen, right? Fast forward to last week, and news hits that Dr. Wendy Osefo and her husband are, I ain't gonna say they're going to jail, but they probably going to jail, okay? And I'm gonna let TMZ walk us through this because I'm still just at a loss of words of exactly what is going on here. But so this drops at 6:52 in the morning on October 10th, okay? So this is according to TMZ. It says Dr. Wendy Osefo, not Osefo, but Dr. Wendy Osefo and her husband Eddie, who, by the way, Eddie is a lawyer, okay? By trade, her husband Eddie is an attorney. And at this point, he has started a marijuana business. I don't know if I can say that, I guess I'll check. But he started a marijuana business and it's called Happy Eddie. And apparently that's been successful, but his bread and butter, I don't know if he's still practicing, but his bread and butter for years has been him as an attorney, which is important for context when I read you this story. So it says Dr. Wendy Osefo and her husband Eddie have been booked on criminal fraud charges, TMZ has learned. According to documents obtained by TMZ, the Real Housewives of Potomac star is facing 16 charges, including 7 felonies for allegedly making false/misleading info fraud in excess of $300. She's also facing 1 misdemeanor count of making a false statement to an officer. It says that, okay, blah, blah, blah. It says, here's the deal. Police say that the couple reported a burglary in April of last year. The couple claimed that they found their bedroom ransacked after returning from a trip to Jamaica. We told you about that incident at the time. We, as in TMZ, we ain't gotta go into that. It says, according to the prosecution's bail recommendation documents obtained by TMZ, the couple reportedly told police that several designer bags and jewelry had been stolen. And jewelry including her engagement, wedding ring, something like that, one of her, wedding bands. It says Carroll County Sheriff's deputies allege Wendy was later seen in a social media post wearing a diamond ring that she reported stolen. Additionally, an investigation determined that numerous items that the Osefos claimed were stolen had been purchased, then returned to the store where a full refund was provided prior to the alleged burglary. The documents indicate the couple had claimed a $450,000 personal property loss to an insurance company. Whew. Okay, it says Wendy Osefo has been on the show since season 5. She was a college professor of education. She taught at Johns Hopkins University before resigning in 2024 and a contributor to The Hill and MSNBC. She has degrees from Temple University and Johns Hopkins and a PhD in public affairs and community development from Rutgers. I have to tell you, there's 3 emotions that I felt and feel as it relates to this story. Number 1, shock. I absolutely did not expect this. Now, if you're familiar with the Real Housewives universe and the Bravo universe, you know that it's not necessarily shocking that a housewife is arrested. As a matter of fact, there is another housewife on this very same show that just got out of jail because she was like on her 5th DUI. Not funny, not cool, but just to give you context, it's not necessarily shocking that this is a housewife who's gotten arrested. It's shocking that it was Dr. Wendy. And it's shocking that it was Dr. Wendy for the reasons that I just mentioned, right? The way she carried herself on the show, not just the fact that she had degrees and was intelligent in X, Y, and Z, because honestly, none of those things speak to a person's character. You can have 15 degrees and still be a horrible human being, right? So it's not judging someone's character based off of accomplishments or anything like that. But watching the show and seeing how she carried herself and seeing, the way she raised her kids, and it was shocking to me, and it still is very, very shocking to me, particularly because I'm just like, let me get to the other emotions. Okay, so shock. Then number 2, disappointment, which really is kind of right there along with shock, but I just really feel disappointed because why? Why do this? You have so much going for you, and they are saying that the couple was in some financial issues. Yes, they're making a lot of money. However, if you are making $1 million, but you're spending $5 million, you broker than the person only making $10. You know what I'm saying? So I think, it sounds like there were some financial struggles, there were some financial issues, but thinking that you're gonna outsmart insurance companies, baby, when I tell you one thing for certain, the insurance people are going to figure it out. Okay, they're going to figure it out. And for you to be as smart as you are, and for your husband to be an attorney, for y'all to sit there and purchase items and refund items that you claim were stolen as if all of this stuff isn't tracked is really weird to me. For you to report something stolen and then wear said stolen property on social media posts is weird to me. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. And my last emotion that I wrote was disgust, because okay, you're having financial issues. But there's many, many ways to resolve your financial struggles that you're having, and you have access to resources that other people who are also experiencing financial issues just don't have access to. And I just don't appreciate seeing things like this. You know what I'm saying? It's like, you have 3 kids, the school year just started, so now they're gonna have to deal with, you know, the implications of all of this being in the news and what's gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? You have all of these jobs. You just quit a job last year, right? At Johns Hopkins. I don't know why you would quit that job if you're having financial issues. You've just gotten your entire face redone. You've just gotten your entire body redone. You have just started remodeling your house. So it's like, are you having financial issues because the economy is tough and because life is lifing, or are your financial issues rooted in your wanting to keep up appearances? You're on this show, you're now in the public eye, you have to have the bags, you have to have the jewelry, you have to appear as if you belong in this space. But if you don't, then you don't. And that's okay too. You know, it's things people will do for money and to appear a certain way, to appear like they have more financially than they have, should really be studied. And I'm sure it is studied, but I just on a fundamental level am disappointed and still very much confused as to how Dr. Wendy and her husband could allow themselves to not be put in the situation, but to put themselves in this kind of predicament. And then to just move around so ridiculous. I mean, the police reports were saying that, you know, they came back, they reported that their house had gotten ransacked, but it was only the master bedroom, right? So no other aspect of the house was touched. They said that it appeared that the entry had came through the second window or the second floor window leading into their room, but there was no evidence of any type of like forced entry. It's like, y'all think that y'all are smarter than people who get paid to do this, who get paid to figure this stuff out? You're just not. And my advice to anyone who is experiencing financial issues, you know, I mean, it's tough out here, but the reality is, you don't want to play those kind of games. You don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're going to get locked up or you're going to be in trouble with law enforcement. It's just not worth it. At least at that point, like there is just no excuse for that. And I had to talk about it because, first of all, I haven't talked about Housewives in 14 episodes. And considering how much I'm a fan, it's kind of shocking. But also, I have to talk about Dr. Wendy and that whole deal. If you don't watch Housewives, then thanks for listening through that whole part. But for the Housewives fans, let me know what you think about Dr. Wendy and all of that shenanigans, okay? Now, last thing I want to talk about, actually, let's move out of everything in the news and get into everything that's on my mind. So, I've just been rambling. Let me make sure that I got y'all everything that I wanted to talk about first. I think I have. Okay, so everything that's on my mind. So the topic that I want to talk about today on this part of the segment is really inspired by an interview that Ayesha Curry did on the Call Her Daddy podcast. If you're not familiar with that podcast, it's literally one of the most popular podcasts that exists. I really, really enjoy that podcast because Alex, who's the interviewer, she is honestly so good at getting people to open up about things that we want to know, but doing so in a way that feels fun, it feels modern, it doesn't feel like, oh my God, like I'm dragging. She's had Cardi B on, she's had politicians on, she's had everybody on this show. And Ayesha Curry went on the show and talked about a lot of things, right? But within like the first 15 minutes, she made some controversial statements that the internet got a hold of. And I want to actually talk about what she had to say because I have thoughts and I'm actually on Ayesha Curry's side. So let's actually get into it. Let me pull it up. Y'all already know I'm pulling up TikTok. Y'all already know. Let's see. All right, so that's the context. And let's take a listen. If I can find it. Okay, here we go.
4 kids. Did you always knew you wanted a big family?
No. So, I didn't want kids. I didn't want to get married. I thought I was going to be career girl and that's it. And I had my eyes set on my goals. And I was never the little girl that like dreamt about the wedding dress and all of that. And then it happened so early in my life. So it's like, it's one of those things like you don't know what you actually don't know what you want. I in the beginning hated it so much. I like did not sign up for that. I also always thought like, I didn't know that he was going to end up playing basketball. Like he said he wanted to be a high school basketball coach. Like I thought I was gonna be like the girl out there getting it. So I didn't know. And so it just like it was weird. And sports fans are so different than like maybe entertainment world fans. And oftentimes it's like very ruthless. And so I think I wasn't expecting that either. Like one time right after my first was born, she was whiny, so I was like, let me just nurse her in the back seat. And Stefan was putting a bike or something in the trunk. And this woman like opens the car door and she sticks her head in and she's like, I just wanted to see the baby. And I'm like, oh, excuse me. And she looks me dead in my face and goes, oh, honey, you know what you signed up for. And then like shuts the door on me. And I was just crying because I was like postpartum. I was just
crying, baby. The way I would have caught a case immediately, like, oh my goodness. For a woman to open somebody's car and talking about I want to see the baby. Who baby you want to see? You want to see my baby while I'm nursing right now and have the audacity to tell me that that's what I signed up for? I probably would have caught a case that day. But that is not what we're talking about today, okay? I wanted to address some of the statements that we just heard Ayesha say, right? Because the internet heard what she had to say and people were making her a villain. They were upset that Ayesha Curry had the balls to say, yeah, I didn't want to be married. I didn't want kids. I actually hated it when I first got into that role. And at the end of the day, when I first saw the social media backlash, I was like, okay, what did this girl say? Because sometimes Ayesha Curry does get on these podcasts and she be saying stuff that's like, okay, girl. But substantively, what she said isn't wrong. And not only is it not wrong, but the real question is, how could it be? How could it be wrong for a woman to say, yeah, I didn't want kids. I didn't want to get married and I didn't enjoy it. To me, I felt like it was refreshing because it was honesty. And that's really what I wanted to talk about today, right? Let's start by addressing different points of what she said, right? So the first part, she said she didn't want kids, she hated it, and she didn't sign up for that. My first reaction, like I said, was thanks for the honesty, because number one, I have so much respect for people, women, especially mothers, who are honest about the fact that they don't want kids. Well, let me back up. If you're a mom, then that means you have kids at this point. But let's go to the people who don't have kids and who say that they don't want kids. Because even if they're like, oh yeah, I'm too selfish, or I only want to think about myself, I have so much respect for you, because what that shows me is you've thought about whether or not you want to have kids, and you've made a conscious decision not to do so because you have enough self-awareness to know that you are not in a position to do and be the kind of person and parent that every child deserves, right? I'm here for that. Bow out gracefully. Don't make a decision to have a child knowing that you're selfish, knowing that you have no business being someone's parent, right? Be honest. And in terms of mothers, I also appreciate the honesty of someone saying, yeah, I didn't want kids. That was not in my plan. You know, life happens. People are allowed to change their mind. People are allowed to evolve. It's also okay for a woman to say, you know what? I wanted kids my whole life. And when I had my child, it took some time. I think that's a fair story, right? That is a fair experience, and it's an experience that exists. And as someone who does want children one day, I appreciate it when I hear mothers speak to me about their experience, whether that be from, you know, making the decision that they wanted kids to maybe even their journey to becoming mothers, because even that looks different from person to person, right? Or, you know, carrying their child, to their delivery experiences, to what did postpartum look like? What did the first few years look like? Like, all of this is information that, as someone who wants to be a mother, I would love to hear. However, what we see is, because these conversations are oftentimes seen as taboo, when someone like Ayesha Curry goes on a major platform and is honest about her experience, and it's not her saying that it's all rainbows, and it's not going with, you know, the mainstream narrative of, yeah, everybody should want to be a mom, and you're gonna, you know, it's gonna happen just like this, and you're gonna be happy, and it's gonna be, she's just being real about her experience. And I think a lot of people don't like that because it goes against what you're supposed to do. It's taboo. But honestly, it's a healthy conversation to have, because what I believe is, when women and mothers are sharing their experiences about how they experience motherhood and how they deal with it in an honest and vulnerable way, it gives women like myself and just other women in general the opportunity to really think these things through. You know what I'm saying? Like, give us the information that we need to make these decisions that will impact us for the rest of our lives. And sometimes I think that we go into these situations blind because we don't have the information, right? Because people just say, oh, motherhood is this, and they don't tell you all the stuff that comes along with it until you're in it, right? Or they don't even tell you then. You are in it, right? Maybe you're experiencing postpartum depression, but you think that you're the only one experiencing postpartum depression because no one has had that conversation, right? It's frowned upon to be the mom who doesn't look like the superhero, or to be sad, or to be tired, or to maybe not be immediately connecting with your baby. Those are taboo topics, but taboo topics don't mean that those experiences aren't happening. And I think that there's so much strength in Ayesha Curry feeling comfortable to be honest about that. But more importantly, there's so much value that can be taken away from that information. And although my experience is different because I do want children, and, you know, it doesn't change that it doesn't change the importance of that level of honesty. For me, I just thought, shout out to Ayesha for being honest about that. Another thing she mentioned is how she didn't want to get married. And I think my points on that is much of the same when it comes to, you know, the kids, right? Like, people should be honest. And I'm not saying that, you know, you need to give all your relationship issues to the whole world and broadcast it to the whole world. But I do think that people need to be more honest about what marriage really looks like. Like, for example, do y'all know when people are like, yeah, like, we need to go back to the days where, like, our grandparents, you know, and our great grandparents, and they were married for 40, 50, 60, 70 years, right? And it's like, it's like, in theory, that sounds great. You know, when you get married, it's supposed to be for a lifetime, right? If you're not getting married to be married for a lifetime, I don't even see, you know, why are you doing it, right? But yes, there are older generations and even generations now of people who have been married for decades. Yes. But the amount of shit that a lot of those couples have endured over the years, You know what I'm saying? It's like, don't just take things for face value. We have to have conversations about, okay, what did those 40, 50, 60 years look like? Because if y'all have been married for, let's say, 40 years, but great, 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 great granddaddy was cheating on you for 35 years or disrespecting you for the entire duration, or you wanted to leave after year 3, but you couldn't because X, Y, and Z, like those are not healthy situations to be in. So we got to account for that. But also, maybe you were together for 40 years and you had ups and you had downs like many relationships do. That's important to know as well. You know, don't paint the picture that it was just roses for 40 years, because I strongly doubt that's the case. Have these conversations about, you know, what you experienced as a married man, a married woman, what those trials and tribulations looked like. What did it look like when you woke up that morning and you looked, you know, at your partner and you were like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore. You know, when that was year 17, but you made it to year 40, what did that process look like? You know, I just wish that people would have more conversations that were based in vulnerability and honesty, because that's what makes people feel less alone. That's what makes people feel less isolated in their situations. And for us to, not us, but for people on the internet and society as a whole to villainize women, particularly Black women, for voicing their opinions and their experiences, I have a problem with that. I take issue with that. You know, it is, because she also talks about her career, right? She talks about the fact that it wasn't necessarily that she didn't like kids or you know, never dreamed of getting married. But if you listen to the clip, as you just did, she talks about how her career was just the pinnacle of importance for her, right? Her purpose, as she saw it, was my career. And because I am a journalist in my heart, I listened to the entire interview, and you can tell that it bothers her to be referred to as Steph Curry's wife. Because as she points out, and as many people probably forget, she is an individual that exists separately from her husband. They are one because they are married, but they are two individual whole people who had their own experiences, their own dreams, their own passions, their own everything, and then they came together. And just by the nature of her being married to who she's married to, yes, I can see her getting lost in that. But in the interview, it became so obvious how much that bothers her. And if you listen to the entire interview, she talks about the fact that she has worked in the entertainment industry since she was a teenager. She is an actress. So she is, you know, she talked about how when other kids were going to school and they were going on vacation and they were going on trips, she was on set. She was working, right? So you have someone who has a work ethic that is instilled in them, who had, you know, goals and dreams that were tied not to a man and not to kids, but to her career. And that's why y'all are mad. Y'all are mad because this goes against the idea that women should, you know, as quickly as possible, find a man, get married, and be, you know, popping out babies every 5 seconds. If that's what you want, you should absolutely do that. And there's nothing wrong with it. However, there are many women who that is not what they want, or they don't want that, you know, as soon as other people. There's room and space for it all. But when you are a woman who, you know, isn't as traditional, when you are the kind of woman who maybe you have prioritized other things like your career before you have prioritized finding, you know, your husband or, you know, all of the other things, you definitely do get judged. And that's why the Ayesha Curry podcast is on this segment, it's not just what's in the news, but things that are on my mind, because I relate to Ayesha Curry in a lot of ways, especially after hearing her podcast. I relate to her from the standpoint of getting married and having kids was not my first order of business, okay? Now, we're different because Ayesha Curry said that she never wanted kids and she never wanted to get married, okay? I don't relate to that. I've always wanted kids and I've always known that I wanted to get married. I want the whole shebang, okay? But that was never like my first priority. My first priority has always been building a life for myself, building my career, which took forever and still actively, working on that. But people have to understand that women, especially women that are being raised in this generation, in this time, we are not concerned with finding a man. We are not concerned with having kids to the point where we are neglecting ourselves, where we're neglecting our dreams, our careers, our goals. That's not what's happening, Maybe that's what happened before, but that's not what's happening now. And so people who are mad or feel some kind of way about that, you're gonna have to freaking deal with it, because the reality is life is so complex and it's so full. There's room for it all. I'm not saying it's easy, you know what I'm saying? I'm not married, nor do I have kids yet. So I can't really speak to how hard it is to balance all of those things. But I can speak to being a woman who knows that she wants all of those things, but has still spent majority of her life thus far focused on her career. And I think it's interesting because now I'm at a time in my life where I'm transitioning, definitely not putting my career on the back burner at all, but trying to be more intentional about the other aspects of my life. And maybe because I'm getting older, or I'm not exactly sure like what it is, but yeah, I definitely can relate to sometimes having conversations and just sometimes being in an environment where people are kind of like, you should, okay, you're a lawyer now, like you're good, like let's focus on this side of your life. And I just think that it's important to remember that there's balance. All things that you want in life, you have to put time, energy, and effort behind. So if you want a career, that's gonna take time, energy, and effort. If you want, you know what I'm saying, to settle down and do that, that's gonna take attention, time, energy, and effort. And personally, I'm at a place where I'm balancing all of that, but whether you're me, whether you're an Ayesha Curry, whether you want kids, don't want a man, want the career, like whatever combination of life that you want, what I think is most important is that we make it a safe space for women to articulate that, and make it a safe space for women to articulate their needs and their fears and the things that they like, the things that they don't like, the things that they, did well, and maybe the things that they're not doing well, All of those experiences are valid. Ayesha Curry's experience as someone who did not want kids and a husband and who only wanted to work, that's a valid experience. Ayesha Curry's experience as a mother who didn't like it at first, that's a valid experience. My experience as someone who has focused predominantly on her career and building a life for herself and trying to, be comfortable and all of these other things, prioritizing that, but also being in a space where I'm transitioning into balancing more things, that's a valid experience. And fortunately, I feel comfortable, voicing my opinions because I recognize that there's power in doing so. There's power in being a woman and saying that, yes, even when I'm a mother, I want to be a working mother, right? I want to show my kids that you can do it all. I want to show my daughter that, as a woman, you can be a mother, you can be a wife, you can be a great mother, a great wife, and you can also have a badass career if that's what you want. I want to show my husband that his mother and women are capable of doing it all. And I'm claiming that the man that I'm married to understands all of that. And my son and my daughter can see that. Like, to me, there's so much value personally in women who work and go after their dreams and their careers and their passions, but also value family and value the traditional aspects of, getting married and having kids. So I think for me, I didn't understand, I understood where the backlash for Ayesha Curry was coming from, but I thought it was very, very important to call out the fact that a lot of that is just rooted in patriarchy. I really didn't want to have to go there, but it's just patriarchy. It's just anytime you push back against whatever the patriarchal narrative is for women, whatever role that the patriarchy has carved out for us to do, anytime you push back against that, you're going to get backlash. And that's why Ayesha Curry got backlash. But nothing that she said was wrong to me. She didn't want kids, okay. She didn't want a man, okay. and so what? And I think that's it. I think I'm probably over an hour. And that's okay. I just wanted to briefly touch on the Ayesha Curry situation. And I really also enjoy talking about motherhood and relationships and what all of that looks like in the context of kind of being a modern 21st century woman who wants a career. I will say, and then I'll wrap up but I will say that another thing that resonated when she brought this up was in the point of her talking about the fact that she wanted a career and wanted to focus on that. I have always thought about, what does that look like? You know what I'm saying? In every facet of my career thus far, I have spoken to women who are mothers and who are not mothers about, that decision. And many of the women who are, where I want to be in life, who are mothers, they tell me it's not easy. They tell me, they say it's not easy. Many of them have different theories about how they balance. I've spoken to some women and they say, you're always going to be dropping the ball somewhere. When you're excelling in your career, then you might be dropping the ball here. When you're, the perfect mom, you might be dropping the ball here. Other women, they say that, it's all doable, but it's hard. Other women who don't have kids, they're like, I remember when I was at the DOJ and my boss, we had this conversation. DOJ a long time ago under a completely different administration, but we had this conversation and she told me just straight up, she was like, I felt like if I had children, it would negatively impact my career. And she told me that just straightforward. She also encouraged me to consider not having kids. Now, did I care? No, because at the end of the day, I don't get my directions from other people. I get my directions from God, and God has already told me that I'm going to, God willing, be a mother. So I wasn't looking to her for that, but I did find value in learning, the different considerations that she had in terms of why she chose not to have kids. And it's understandable, it's the job that she does, extremely demanding, right? The time that it takes, extremely demanding. And so I think of all of those things. I will say I'm also a very stubborn person. We've talked about this before. I am a Taurus. So in my mind, if I put my mind to it, I can do it. And I have, I just have to wait and see how life pans out. But we all do. And I think that's really the main takeaway from what Ayesha Curry was saying. She didn't want kids. She didn't want to get married. She wanted to focus on career. But fast forward, she is married to a man who she loves and talks about so much about how much she loves him and how much he supports her in fulfilling her dreams and doing the things that she does. And she also has 3 or 4 beautiful children. So she didn't plan for life to go the way it went. She just waited to see. And such is life, you know, such is life. I think that's the perfect place to end it this week. I have nothing else to say. Pretty sure we're over an hour, but as always, I really, really appreciate you for taking time to listen, for taking time to watch, and I appreciate you in advance for liking, subscribing, and staying in touch so that you know any and every time that a new episode is out. Thank you so much. Hope you're doing well. Take care of yourself. Please take care of yourself. Talk soon.
It's everything.